Someone walked out of your life and left a silence so loud you could hear it at 2 inches the morning. Maybe it was a friend who knew your secrets and chose to use them. Maybe it was a parent who was supposed to stay but packed a bag instead. Maybe it was a marriage vow spoken before God, and still they left. Maybe it wasn't one person. Maybe it was everyone, all at once, and you looked around, and the room was empty. And in that emptiness, a thought came. A thought so quiet, so dangerous, you almost didn't catch it. Even God must be done with me, too. This video is for the person who had that thought. Stay with me. There is a difference between being left and being forsaken. The world will teach you that those two things are the same. When people walk away, it means something is wrong with you. That rejection is a verdict. That abandonment is evidence. But I need to say something to you right now, plainly, with no decoration on it. People leaving you says nothing about whether God has left you. Not one thing. And I want to spend the next few minutes proving that to you. Not with motivational phrases, not with empty comfort, but with the Word of God and with a story that has been changing lives for thousands of years. A story about a man so abandoned, so stripped down, so completely alone that most people in his position would have stopped believing entirely. His name was Joseph, and his story is yours. Abandonment is not just loneliness. Loneliness is an empty room. Abandonment is an empty room where someone used to be. There's a photograph missing from the wall. There's a seat at the table that still has the shape of that person's absence pressed into it. There's a phone you reach for before you remember they don't answer anymore. And the spiritual weight of it is this: when the people closest to you pull away, it can shake your theology. Because we experience love through people, we see God's faithfulness through relationships. And when those relationships collapse, when the very vessels God used to show us love crack and fall, it is terrifying to trust that the source of that love is still there. The psalmist knew this. David, the man after God's own heart, wrote in Psalm 27, verse 10, and I want you to hear this slowly. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. David didn't say if they would forsake me. He said, though. He already knew. He already understood that human love, even the most sacred human love, parental love, has the capacity to fail, and he wrote it as a condition, not as a surprise. He was preparing himself, and he was preparing us, for the moment when the deepest human bonds go silent. And God's answer to that silence? I will receive you, not I will tolerate you, not I will manage you, not I will not put up with you since everyone else left. Receive, that is a word of welcome. That is a word of open arms. That is a word of someone who has been watching the road, waiting for you to come back into view. But now let's talk about Joseph, because Joseph didn't just lose one person, he lost everything. And the way his story ends will change the way you see yours. Genesis 37. Joseph is 17 years old. He is the son Jacob loved most. He has the coat, he has the dreams. He has the father's favor wrapped around him like armor, and from the outside, it looks like nothing can touch him. But his brothers see that coat, and they do not see a brother. They see a threat. They see everything they don't have, and they decide to do something about it. One day, Joseph walks out into the fields to find them. He's not carrying a weapon. He's not sent as a spy. He's carrying food. He's coming to serve the men who despise him. And when they see him coming from a distance, look at Genesis 37, verse 18, they plotted to kill him. Before he even reached them, before he said a word, the decision was already made. They throw him in a pit, a dry, empty cistern in the ground. And then, and this is the part that destroys me every time I read it, they sat down to eat. Genesis 37, verse 25. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming. They ate a meal, while their brother sat in a pit. While he called out to them, Because we know from Genesis 42, verse 21, that he called out, that he pleaded, and they ate. There is no betrayal quite like the betrayal of someone who ignores your voice. And then they sold him. 20 pieces of silver, not even 30, less than the price of a slave. And they took his coat, the one his father gave him, dipped it in goat's blood, and sent it back to Jacob as proof of death. Joseph didn't just lose his brothers that day. He lost his father's knowledge that he was alive. He lost his home, his identity, his name, in a way. He was now property, being carried toward a country that didn't speak his language, toward a people who didn't know his God, toward a future that looked nothing like the dreams God had given him. At 17 years old, if there was ever a moment to conclude that God had abandoned you, this was it. And yet, Genesis 39, verse 2, 4 words that change everything. The Lord was with Joseph. Not the Lord had been with Joseph. Not the Lord would one day return to Joseph. Was. Present tense. Active. Right there in the pit. Right there in the caravan. Right there in the foreign land. God never moved. Here's what strikes me about Joseph's story. The abandonment didn't happen once. It happened again and again and again. He gets to Egypt. He's purchased by a man named Potiphar, a high official. And because God is with him, everything Joseph touches succeeds. Potiphar notices. He promotes Joseph. Joseph finds himself running the entire household. Things are looking up, and then Potiphar's wife lies. She grabs his cloak. He runs. She screams. She holds the cloak like evidence. And the man who trusted Joseph the most throws him into prison, falsely accused this time. There is something uniquely brutal about being abandoned after being faithful. When you did nothing wrong, when you held your integrity, and it cost you everything anyway. But Genesis 39, verse 21, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor, even in prison. And then there's the cupbearer. Joseph interprets his dream in prison. The cupbearer is restored to Pharaoh's service exactly as Joseph predicted. And Joseph asks one thing. Genesis 40, verse 14, remember me, mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison. And Genesis 40, verse 23. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Joseph sat in that prison for 2 more years waiting for a man to remember him. 2 years of silence. 2 years of the door never opening. At what point do you give up? At what point does a person in Joseph's position decide that God is a fairy tale? Is that prayer just air moving through a room where all the promises lies? Joseph never reached that point, and I want you to ask yourself why. Because it's important. It's not because Joseph was superhuman. It's not because he didn't feel the weight of it. He did feel it. We know he wept. We know he asked. We know he remembered. It's because Joseph had learned something that most of us are still trying to learn. God's silence is not God's absence. The door not opening is not the same as God not existing. The cupbearer forgetting is not God forgetting. And the 2 years of waiting, those 2 years were not wasted years. There were years of preparation for a throne. There were years of depth being built into a man who would one day need to have enough character to steward the salvation of nations. You cannot rush what God is building. I want to talk honestly about what abandonment does to the soul. It teaches you to shrink. When people leave, especially people who said they would stay, something happens in your spirit. You start taking up less space. You stop asking for things. You stop expecting. You build walls, not out of strength, but out of exhaustion, because it takes less out of you to keep everyone at a distance than it does to let them in and watch them go. You start believing certain things about yourself. I am too much. I am not enough. I am the common denominator in every departure. And you carry those beliefs around quietly. You don't announce them, but they shape how you pray. They shape whether you pray. They shape whether you believe your prayers are reaching anyone at all. If our messages have blessed or encouraged you, please consider supporting us so we can keep spreading God's love and light to more hearts. You'll find the Ko-fi support link pinned below. Here is what God says to those beliefs. Isaiah 49, verses 15 to 16. God is speaking to Israel, a nation that felt abandoned, that said in verse 14, "The Lord has forsaken me, the Lord has forgotten me." And God responds, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." Engraved, not written in pencil, easily erased, not written in ink, which fades. Engraved, cut into, permanent. The kind of mark that does not wash off, does not wear away, does not disappear with time or distance or silence. Your name is cut into the hands of God, and those hands, those same hands, were later pierced with nails on a cross. The God who said, "I have engraved you on my palms," then stretched out those palms and let the nails go through. The abandonment you feel, Jesus felt it too. Matthew 27 to 46. From the cross, in the worst moment in all of human history, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He felt forsaken. He experienced abandonment. The separation from the Father, carrying the sin of all humanity, produced a cry that echoes through every person who has ever felt alone. Jesus was not performing. He was not speaking poetically. He was in it. He was in the pit. He was in prison. He was in the caravan heading toward Egypt. He went there so that God's answer could be final and permanent. You are never alone, because I came into your aloneness. And I did not leave. Back to Joseph. Years pass. Pharaoh has a dream. The cupbearer finally remembers. Joseph is brought from prison, cleaned up, and stands before the most powerful man in the known world. And he interprets the dream: 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. And in that moment, Pharaoh does something extraordinary. He appoints Joseph, a Hebrew slave and former prisoner, as second in command over all of Egypt. Genesis 41, verse 41. I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. The pit became a palace. But here's what I need you to see. It's not the promotion that matters most. What matters most is what happens when Joseph's brothers come to Egypt during the famine, desperate and bowing before the man they sold. They don't recognize him. He recognizes them, and he doesn't take revenge. He doesn't expose them publicly. He doesn't use his power to crush them. He weeps. He weeps so hard he has to leave the room. He weeps for his brothers, for his father, for everything that was lost. And when the moment finally comes, when he reveals himself, look at what he says. Genesis 45, verse 4 to 8. I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. It was not you who sent me here, but God. Joseph had carried the pain. He had sat in the pit. He had served in prison. He had waited 2 years in silence. And on the other side of all of it, he could see a thread, a single, unbroken thread that ran through every betrayal, every false accusation, every forgotten promise. God was in every single moment, not causing the evil, but present in it, working through it, redeeming it. And Joseph's theology was not naive. He didn't say, it wasn't that bad. He acknowledged they sold him. He acknowledged the suffering was real. But he looked at the whole arc of his life and said, God had a plan. And the plan survived the pit. I want to speak directly to you now. You are in a chapter of your story that feels like Genesis 37, not Genesis 45. You are in the pit. You are in prison. You are the person counting days, waiting for the cupbearer to remember you. And everything around you is suggesting that this is the end of the story. It is not. The abandonment you have experienced, the people who walked out, the relationships that collapsed, the silence where love used to be. None of that gets to write the final sentence of your life. Only God writes that sentence. And God is still writing. Romans 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things, not some things, not only the good things, not the easy chapters and the seasons of blessing. All things. The betrayal is in that number. The divorce is in that number. The friend who turned their back is in that number. The parent who never showed up is in that number. God does not waste a single wound. But here's what you have to understand. Joseph didn't get to see the plan while he was in the pit. He had to walk in faithfulness before the revelation came. He had to serve Potiphar well before he was promoted. He had to interpret dreams in prison before he was called to stand before Pharaoh. He had to be faithful in the chapters that made no sense before he got to see the chapter that explained everything. You don't get the explanation first. You get the faithfulness first. And the explanation comes on the other side. So, what do you do right now, while you are still in it? First, stop trying to make it make sense. Joseph didn't get an explanation. He got a presence. God didn't send an angel to the pit to say, "Here's the plan. Here's what happens next. Hold on." God was simply with him, and that was enough. Stop demanding the explanation before you're willing to trust. Ask God not for an answer, but for company. Say, "I don't understand any of this, but I don't want to walk through it alone. Be with me." He will be. He already is. Second, refuse to let their leaving redefine you. When people walk away, the enemy wants you to internalize their departure as your identity. You are unwanted. You are unworthy. You are unloved. But that is a lie dressed up in experience. Your identity was not given to you by the person who left. It was given to you before the world was formed. Jeremiah 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. The God who made you knows you. And he has never confused you with anyone else. He has never mixed you up with someone more worthy. He chose you, specifically, on purpose, with full knowledge of every flaw and failure. Their leaving does not revoke that. Third, keep showing up. Joseph kept serving. In Potiphar's house, he served well. In prison, he served well. He could have grown bitter and withdrawn. He could have done the bare minimum. But he kept showing up with excellence, not because the circumstances deserved it, but because God deserved it. Your faithfulness in this season is not for the people who left. It is between you and God. Show up for your prayer life, even when it feels hollow. Show up for your faith, even when it feels fragile. Show up for the purpose you were given, even when no one is watching. God is watching, and he is the only audience that matters. Fourth, let yourself grieve. Joseph wept multiple times. He wept when he saw his brothers. He wept when he saw Benjamin. He wept when he finally revealed himself. God does not ask you to suppress your grief. He asks you to carry it to him. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close, not distant, not waiting for you to sort yourself out before he'll come near. Close to the brokenhearted, close to the crushed. The very condition you're in is the condition that draws him nearest. Cry, grieve, bring the tears to God. He can handle every single one of them. There is one more person I need to speak to, and it's the person who isn't just hurting about the people who left. It's the person who feels like God has left, who has prayed and heard nothing, who has cried out and felt no response, who has opened the Bible and found words that feel like they belong to someone else's story, not theirs. I want to say something to you with all the gentleness I have. God's silence is not God's rejection. It never has been. It never will be. The silence you're experiencing right now, the season where heaven feels like brass and prayer feels like a monologue, is not evidence of absence. It is sometimes the very place where depth is being formed in you that could never be formed in the noise. Elijah, after one of the greatest miracles in the entire Old Testament, ran into the wilderness and asked God to let him die. 1 Kings 19 verse 4. He was depleted, burned out, afraid. And do you know what God did? He didn't send a sermon. He didn't send a rebuke. He sent an angel with bread and water. Get up and eat, because the journey is too much for you. He fed him twice. And then he spoke, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the great wind, but in a still small voice, a gentle whisper. God speaks in the silence. But you have to get quiet enough to hear it. And sometimes the only way we get quiet enough is when everything else goes away. The people who left, as painful as it is, they took their noise with them. And in that quiet, if you lean in, you may hear something you've never been still enough to hear before. I am still here. I have always been here, and I am not going anywhere. I want to close with one promise, one that has held through every generation, every season of suffering, every pit and prison and forgotten waiting room in the history of God's people. Hebrews 13, verse 5. God himself says it, not through a prophet, not through an angel, not through a feeling, but through his own voice recorded for you to read and hold. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. In the original Greek, this is the most emphatic negation possible. It is structured as a double negative, which scholars tell us is the strongest way to say never in the entire New Testament. God is not just saying, I won't leave. He is saying there is no scenario, no condition, no failure, no pit deep enough, no sin heavy enough, no silence long enough in which he would leave you. Never. Not unless you fall apart. Not until you stop performing. Not if you keep your life together. Never. The people who left you did so with their limitations. They were human. They were broken. They were carrying wounds of their own that had nothing to do with your worth. They left because people leave. It is one of the most painful truths of being alive in a broken world. People leave. But God does not operate within human limitation. God does not run out of patience. God does not get tired of your questions. God does not check his watch and decide he has somewhere better to be. God does not feel inconvenienced by your grief, or disappointed by your doubts, or disgusted by your mess. He stays. He has always stayed. He was in the pit with Joseph. He was in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He was in the belly of the fish with Jonah. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane with his own son. He was in the tomb, and he walked out of the tomb, which means nothing, not abandonment, not betrayal, not silence, not suffering, not death itself, gets to have the final word. If you're watching this and you've been carrying the weight of being left, I want to pray with you before you go. God, I bring before you every person watching this who knows what it means to feel abandoned, who has sat in rooms where someone used to be, who has stared at a phone that doesn't ring anymore, who has whispered to you in the dark and wondered if you were there. I ask you to do what only you can do, not to replace what was taken, but to fill what was emptied. Not to erase the pain, but to sit in it with them, the way you sat with Joseph, the way you never once left. Remind them tonight that their story is not over, that the pit is not the final chapter, that you have been writing a purpose through every page of their pain, even the pages they would never have chosen. Let them feel, right now, that they are not alone. In the name of Jesus, who knows exactly what abandonment feels like. If this spoke to something in you, share it with someone who's walking through a hard season. Leave a comment below, not just a thumbs up, but your name, because you are not a number. You are a person God knows, and this community wants to stand with you. And if you haven't yet given your life to the God who never leaves, today is the right day. He's been waiting, not with disappointment, not with a list of everything you got wrong, with open arms, like a father who saw you coming from a long way off and ran.